Hello everyone. I want to have a chat with you all today about fake population numbers, why this matters, how it's linked to other agendas, what else we've been lied to about, and what can we do? Fear is everywhere. It's hard to avoid who's feeling it. But I thought today we can all have a look at some of the lies we're told, why this might be, what we can do about it, and actually, once we accept this and realize it, how empowering it is. Because once we accept that these lies are all part of the agenda really starts to tumble down and we're far less easy to fall. So let's dive into it. I've got a video to share on this, but I'm going to leave it till a little bit later in the video just so I don't trigger all the algorithms too early. But how many of us have been told that the population explosion is killing the planet, that humans are killing the planet, our populations are out of control, it's over 8 billion now, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Well, is it? We're going to look at some information in a minute that really, puts that into question. And quite honestly, I've never believed it. Even as far back as when I was at school, I was that really annoying child that the teachers hated because I was always asking the awkward questions. And I can remember asking my geography teacher, well, how do you know the populations? So many people can remember the population of their town or the city or their country. And I was like, well, how do we really know about all of that? But I also want to discuss the thing that two things can be true. So just because we might be being lied about the population and how many of us are on the actual planet doesn't mean that we don't need to take a good hard look at our behavior as humans and how this throwaway culture, the disposable culture, the plastics everywhere, the chemicals everywhere, about how we need to make some changes. And one of the things that I think, and I'd love to know what you think, is how are these agendas really distracting us from the real side of things? We all know that big industry is absolutely disastrous in many ways. I posted on my Instagram about the film Dark Waters, about the whole Teflon fiasco and the lies that were told there. It's absolutely brilliant film, Dark Waters. You can actually watch it on Netflix, surprise, surprise. But it's a real must watch for everyone. And we know that big industry and that, we all know about big pharma and the lies we're told there. And yet, how are they still getting away with it? And actually, I think a lot of it is we've got to question a lot more and not be afraid to challenge the narrative and not have to prove our points of view. So I'll come back to this in a minute. But censorship is off the scale. Let me know in the comments who is in the UK. Oh my goodness, public figures in the UK government, complete muppets. And I don't mean that in a way that I don't think they're having a disastrous effect on the country. And there's some really awful innocent victims out there. But seriously, talk about spreading fear, 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 and hoping that it's going to be a way of stopping everyone talking out. Well, I think they're going to have a surprise on their hands. Because let's face it, I think a lot of us are starting to realise that virtually all of history is a lie. So let's look at a few quotes from George Orwell's 1984. So most of us know that that's a classic novel that explores the themes of totalitarianism, surveillance, and censorship. And I picked out a few famous quotes from 1984. Let me know what you think about this. So, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. So we can see here how the party that controls and manipulates reality and truth is really enforcing ignorance and taking the power away from people. This fact that the ignorance isn't strength for us as an individual, keeping us ignorant is a strength for the people that are trying to control us. This one I think most of people have heard of, but the next quote from 1984 by George Orwell: "The past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, and the lie became the truth." I mean, how true is that, that the party that controls history controls the truth? And one of the things I've absolutely loved is the explosion of videos over the last sort of 5 years about Tartaria, about the pyramids. I mean, who here got told at school that pyramids were burial chambers for the pharaohs? I mean, honestly, we have to laugh at ourselves because, you know, at certain ages, yes, of course we're going to believe that. But when I haven't actually been to the pyramids in Egypt, but I have seen some pyramids in Guatemala and Belize, and oh my goodness, just incredible. And again, it's something I'm so loving seeing different narratives about, and there's so much out there. Have a look at Michael Tellinger's stuff on that. It's just absolutely fantastic. But by constantly rewriting history, whoever rewrites the history remains in control of the present and the future. So we've only got to look about the great exhibitions and how these huge buildings with huge doors and giants on display, and how suddenly they're all wiped out of our history. Look into Tartaria, as I said, it's just absolutely fascinating. I love, love, love. I love looking into it because once we start looking into this, it opens up a whole new rail of possibilities for us all. It's so exciting. The next quote from 1984, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. So this links into the quote above, but basically the power of controlling information in history to really maintain authority over society. And we're seeing this happening all the time. Now, as someone who's been working in natural healthcare, and we know how much that is hidden from all of us, and oh my goodness, goodness forbid any of us that actually talk about natural cures to things, which most people know have been around forever. We're just not allowed to talk about them. And let's face it, how's Big Pharma working out for us as a society? I mean, absolutely horrendously. I'm not pretending there's not some good stuff in there. There is. However, we all know the balance is completely wrong. The fourth quote, in the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it. Now, there are so many experiments that show this. I mean, seriously, you can look up so many experiments about how, for example, when they get actors involved and they tell everyone that, you know, a banana's an apple, people just, we've lost the ability to trust our intuition, to trust what we see with our own eyes. Now, if you're looking at online information, it's really difficult to trust what you see with your own eyes because so much can be manipulated. The AI now is off the scale. But actually, if we're out in nature, look up into the sky. Those of you who are adults now, most of us, when we were children, we drew fluffy clouds in the sky. We didn't draw crisscross like this. And yet so many people are just supposedly really intelligent people will refuse to admit that geoengineering, chemical engineering exists. Now, if you search Catherine Edwards, Dane Wigington, geoengineering on YouTube, my videos that I've done with Dane Wigington don't even come up. So please check out the playlists on my video channel and take a look at those, because these things are so important, because until we get wide scale acceptance that a lot of what's poisoning the planet and everything on it and destroying so much of nature and destroying human health is such a big contributor is the geoengineering and what they're spraying to us, because everything they spray from the skies we're absorbing through our skins. And when I'm talking about we, I'm not just talking about humans. I'm talking about every plant, every animal, every mineral, the soil, which we'll come on to in a bit, is just crucial for everything. But if we don't control what's sprayed on us from the skies and really get the message out there and get this stopped, then we're fighting it's such a hard battle. And when people start waking up and sort of saying, oh my goodness, this is true, they might go into a bit of a fear state initially, but then once they've realized that, they can feel empowered, because there's so much that we can all do when we band together to stop things like this. So this thing about they make everyone believe 2 and 2 makes 5, people laugh and think it's silly until you look at what they've told us over the whole pandemic and everything, and you realise that people do fall for it. Because if you tell people, it's like the emperor's new clothes all over again, isn't it? Quote number 5 from 1984, thought crime does not entail death, thought crime is death. So this really highlights the censorship and control over individual thought, such that even thinking against the party agenda is considered a crime. And oh my goodness, aren't we seeing this now? I mean, you know, you've only got to look up what's happening in the UK at the moment, and I'm sure it's happening in many other parts of the world as well. But you know, it is absolutely ludicrous at the moment. But actually, let me know in the comments below, do you think they've gone too far now? Do you think this is another wake-up call like the so-called pandemic was? Do you think now that Keir Starmer is coming out with these ridiculous censorship things, do you think the next wave of people are going to say enough is enough? Of course, in a peaceful way. My 6th quote from 1984, the best books are those that tell you what you already know. So again, censorship, where only information that supports the party's ideology is permitted and all other perspectives are suppressed. So the amount of information being thrown at us on every form of social media now is just ridiculous. And bearing in mind, the younger generations have grown up knowing nothing else. So they are really indoctrinated to this. All their, you know, I'm old enough to know that we used to have to go to the library to do our research. Nowadays, it's not. It's all at the fingertips. And we all know that most of the search engines are completely corrupted to make us think what they already know. I mean, I've seen some of the things that are written about me, and it's just laughable. So this is the problem, isn't it? It's so difficult because we, in books, in the education system, on the television, which we're going to come on to, all these forms of mind control, they're reinforcing the only message that we're allowed to know. And if you do that long enough, I think they've proven that it's only 2 generations it takes for things to get lost completely, particularly when they're wiping the internet of things that they don't want us to know about, literally as we speak. And go back to the old days of the book burning. You know, we all know where they wanted to do that. They wanted to burn the books to take that information out of circulation. Well, now they don't even need to burn the books. They just need to wipe and corrupt the search engines, unfortunately. And bear in mind, AI is making this easier and easier to do, because every time we all search using AI, and we all do it to varying degrees, it's taking that information and showing where they need to put their attention next. So the next quote, if you want to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself. This was quite a deep one for me, but basically it's looking at self-censorship and the amount of self-censorship that's required to survive in a society where even your own thoughts can cause so much issues for you. Now, throughout history that we know about, we've seen that it can have been very dangerous. For example, having a different religious thought to others, and we've seen so many executions and things happening for people's religious beliefs. But again, look what's happened now in the pandemic. Look how the separation, the whole divide and conquer, worked so absolutely brilliantly. Because if we haven't got the strength to actually be honest about what we feel, and if we're surrounded by people that can't accept, you know, that all my good friends, of which I have a lot less now than I did a few years ago, but to me the sign of a good friend is you can really respect his other opinions and not have to agree with them. But how else do we learn if we don't challenge ourselves? If we're just in an echo chamber of what we've always been told, then we're never going to expand our consciousness, and that's exactly what they want. So let's all make sure we're the type of friends that can actually entertain other people's respectful approaches and sort of reflect on that and see if there's something we can learn. And the final quote that I've got from 1984 is, until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they, sorry, I'll start that again. Until they become conscious, they will never rebel. And until after they have rebelled, they cannot become conscious. I mean, this sort of should send chills down all of our spine. We've talked about raising consciousness so much, and I think this is the beauty of these platforms. We really are attracting our tribe, so to speak. But this shows how much the paradox of control and freedom in a censored society is, that if they can keep people in a state of unconsciousness, then that's how they prevent rebellion. And one of the main ways to not expand in consciousness that I've talked about in so many of my videos is to poison us from the skies, from the water, from the food. I mean, again, the ludicrous thing where you've got people in hazmat suits going out and spraying fields of food crops that then we or animals are eating. I mean, hello, if that's not obvious in itself. So I thought those quotes from 1984 give a really good sort of commentary, really, on the dangers of censorship and the manipulation of truth. We know it, but talk about all written in plain sight. And I think we could do well quite often by reflecting on that and really understanding just how far the totalitarian regimes have really spread now. So I want to let's come back to the population side of things. And what I want to do is I'm just going to share part of a video. Let me share my screen. I'm going to show part of a video that is on my X channel. So look me up on X. I can't play the whole video because it will get the whole thing taken down, but I can play some of it. So let's just have a look about this, the world population hoax. And I got it from June Slater and it's shared on my CatherineEdwards.life X. Let's have a little listen.
The official numbers for world population released by the United Nations, as of now, have just surpassed 8 billion people living on Earth. In 1800, there were only 900 million members of the human family spread across the world, raising to 1.65 billion in 1900. And skyrocketing to nearly 7 billion in the year 2000. Now, in 2023, we have allegedly just passed the 8 billion mark. Given past failures and the many lies spewed by the UN during recent world events, however, it is fair and justified to remain skeptical of such statistics and to do some independent investigation before blindly believing. By collecting official statistics and doing your own math, it is difficult to find a way for these numbers to add up. For example, India supposedly has a countrywide population of well over 1.4 billion citizens. But when practical calculations are made using the UN's own numbers, how they could possibly conclude such a high figure is clear as mud. Taking their official figures of populations from the largest 300 cities in India, from 12.4 million in the biggest city Mumbai to just over 100,000 in the 300th placed city of Aurangabad, and adding them all together, that barely accounts for 200 million of this supposed 1.4 billion. If all the 300 places with the largest populations in India taken together only account for 200 million people, it is statistically and geographically impossible for there to be another 7 times this number mysteriously hiding out in the remaining small towns and villages with populations all lower than 100,000. A similar situation occurs when adding up the official figures for the entire world's 300 most populated cities. Taking the UN's own official statistics from 24.1 million in the world's largest city of Shanghai, China, to only 361,000 people in the 300th largest city of Beirut, Lebanon. The combined figures only come out to approximately 1 billion people. Even after adding all the statistics calculated for surrounding metropolitan and suburban housing areas around each city, the total only amounts to around 1.5 billion. Where are these other alleged 6.5 billion people hiding? Being generous, independent analysts have estimated at most Another billion people could possibly be spread out across the world's rural countrysides, still putting the actual number well below 3 billion. The likely reason for these exaggerated statistics is that governments are incentivized to lie about population figures in order to collect more money for social programs. Then, by raising population figures to shocking levels, fear is created in the minds of the masses, and they are even more easily able to control and sell us on expensive, enslaving solutions. This hoax has resulted in billions of dollars spent fighting the phantom of so-called overpopulation, and led to many inhumane population control programs. In reality, however, if everyone were all squeezed into a population density of 27,000 per square mile, which is comparable to New York City, 8 billion people would only fill up the state of Texas, leaving the entire rest of the world uninhabited.
I'm going to stop it there because, quite frankly, if I carry on, I'll get my channel taken down. So go and watch the last little bit of that on my X. But we get the picture. And do you know what? Why does this matter? You know, why does it matter? Well, it matters because all the awful population control agendas, all the electric cars, all the 15-minute cities, all these things, they all span off us believing these figures that they're told, and that the planet can't support us anymore. All the calculations about what the planet can support in terms of mankind are based on these figures. So it does really, really matter. Now, I haven't got a clue what the real figures are, and quite frankly, I don't care. I'm more concentrating on what we can do, each of us, in our everyday lives to literally be more responsible citizens in every way, towards the planet, towards not everything being so disposable. You know, let's keep the same clothes. Let's not just have a different outfit every week. Let's not go and have that coffee, that takeaway coffee, etc. But it links into so much we've been talked about. I mean, let me cover a little bit thing about EMF, electromagnetic frequency. So tell me in the comments, did you know that way back in May 2011, the World Health Organization, you know, but back then many of us still trusted it, classified radio frequency electromagnetic fields like those from our mobile phones as possibly carcinogenic. They basically had those figures back in 2011. But yet, if we say that on most social media platforms, it's put as misinformation at best, and at worst, your channel will be taken down. Think about the television, or as we know, tell-a-vision. It's such a powerful medium for influencing public opinion. And people of my generation, we grew up with television. Younger people have grown up with social media. But, you know, the television literally shapes cultural norms and is absolutely brilliant at controlling behavior. You know, it really sets agendas. It really, you know, the TV channels and whoever's controlling those really dictate what's shown to us in terms of information, what's important. We've had, you know, people like Jimmy Savile, one of the world's most prolific paedophiles, who was friendly with the royal family and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, put on our television running Jimmy Savile, Jimmy Can Fix It, working with children. You know, this mismatch of people's intuition looking at someone like him and then what they're being told on the television really messes up with our intuitive abilities. The way that things are framed, the way the news is framed, they use very specific NLP type specific language, images, tones, music, frequencies that all influence how we interpret information. Reinforcement of cultural norms and stereotypes is just absolutely the norm on TV. So we all know that, you know, again, those of us in the UK, working class people are portrayed in one way, middle class and upper class in another way. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And one of the things we saw in the pandemic was the way that the trust the science and people's real life experiences, and mothers who were questioning what they wanted and asking questions were just shut down completely by the way that they were stereotyped, and we, you know, if you didn't have a white coat on, you didn't know what you were talking about. And normalizing different ways of life, attitude, prejudices is absolutely ridiculous. But it's also used majorly for distraction for critical issues. So I will admit, you know, if I want to de-stress and things, I'll watch something junky on TV just to just zone out of it all. And that's fine for a purpose. But how many people use the TV as distraction? And we know that the whole news channels, you know, that used to have a good reputation. Now I think so many people are realizing that, again, it's just pushing an agenda and being used to distract people and drain their energy so that they don't start to think critically. But also there's the emotional manipulation of stuff. You know, you'll see strong emotional responses that will influence behavior and opinions, emotional storytelling, dramatic music, visual effects, which will sway viewers' feelings. And I'm sure that we've all done that, and often to bypass reasonable thought. It's incredible what you can get away with. When I was growing up, there was a cartoon for children called Captain Pugwash. Look it up. And in Captain Pugwash, there was a character called Master Bates and Seaman Staines. And that was on mainstream TV for all the children. Now, of course, the children wouldn't have picked up on that, but all the parents watched it too, and no one picked up on it for years. And it was only once it was pointed out to people, people were like, how on earth can I not have picked up on this? Because you're in such a trance when you're watching the television. So there's so much that, you know, let alone the political influence and propaganda that's just literally pushed to us in a certain agenda. Again, anyone who saw the daily updates during the pandemic is pretty clear how biased reporting, and if you repeat something enough, how that propaganda really, really hits. I think probably one of the worst things that I think about things like television and social media, and I see this so much, is it really creates a passive audience. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we're watching television or on social media, it's largely a passive activity. Now, yes, we might engage, and we see people often putting really nasty comments, saying things, responding to, say, social media. Obviously, you can't do that on the TV, but that you wouldn't say to someone's face, which is absolutely terrible. But also, when you're in that passive activity of just consuming, it really shuts down the critical thinking part of our brains. So over time, this constant passive behavior disempowers people and leaves them to less critical analysis of information, making them far, far more susceptible to manipulation. And I'm saying them, but obviously I'm subject to this as well. And decreased attention span. I mean, again, you know, bang, 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 we're seeing this. It's a real issue. So what can we do about it all? Now, this is a biggie, but I am so encouraged what we can do. Share, share, and share. So, for example, if this resonates with you, please share it with people. Be brave. Share it with someone that might not resonate. You might not get a thank you for it, but it might just trigger those seeds of thoughts. And I think, you know, getting control of our thoughts, emotions, and actions is so important. Joe Dispenza explains this far better than I ever could. So go and find some good Joe Dispenza videos to look into. But basically, the fact of the matter is we can choose our thoughts. Not all the time. We're not about pretending everything's okay and shutting down emotions. For example, if you're going through grief, you need to allow yourself to go through grief. But we can choose how long we stay there. And with all the manipulation that I've outlined before, it can be very easy to feel empowered. But the first step is to recognize it and then switch it. And one of the key things about switching it is to not forget the basics. So when we keep this physical vessel as healthy as possible, when we do the absolute basics of giving ourselves good food, giving ourselves good water, exercising, getting out in nature, when you do those things day in, day out, you will not be as programmable. And when we're looking about choosing our thoughts, it's not just positive thinking, it's not about taking action, but when you get yourself in the right frame of mind of a can-do mentality, being really honest about where you are now, where we are now, and whatever that society looks like for you. Once we've accepted that, we can start to take positive actions for where we go. So I like the analogy of the planting the seed in the ground. If you're a good gardener, you'll prepare your soil really well. So depending what seed you're going to plant, you'll look at what sort of acidity it is. You'll add some extra organic matter. You'll make sure there's some good worms and soil microbiome in there. There's loads of ways you can do that. And then you'll think about what time of year you need to plant that particular seed, and you'll do some research about what's the best way to plant it. Does it need to be started inside? Can it go straight-eyed? What does it need, a sunny spot, a shady spot? So you've done all that preparation, and then you lovingly plant that seed and you make a connection to it. I know a lot of the old farmers used to just chew the seeds in their mouths or swill them around in their mouths to make that energetic bond with the seed, because there's a lot of evidence to show that if you do that, that seed will grow with the nutrients that your body's missing, but that's for another day. And then once you've planted that seed, you look after it, you water it. If you're like me, you talk to it, but you don't go and keep digging it up every day to see if it's growing. You have to have that degree of trust. And how do you get that trust? You get that trust by researching what the seed needs, by doing the preparation well, by following through and nurturing it. And if you've done all that preparation, if you've taken those inspired actions, then that innate trust is there. And that's no different to what we're looking at on a global scale. When we do that work, we don't all have to be able to recite figures and remember every single fact. But when we innately know what's right and what's wrong, we can take conscious decisions to do something about it, and it becomes much, much easier. So there's all stuff that we can do. You know, we can make those daily changes, not to support companies where possible that we don't agree with. Don't go and get a disposable coffee in a cup that's going to end up God knows where. Try and buy something that's not in plastic. Go and help in a community garden if you haven't got one of your own. And most importantly, let's be careful with our thoughts and words. Be honest about where we're at, reflect, and then choose to sort of strengthen your belief, which will then reinforce your actions. So I think we can keep a sense of humor about all this. You know, sense of humor is one of the greatest ways to really lift our vibration and keep ourselves positive. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I'm really intrigued to see what your thoughts are on these, what you think we can do. What else do you think we're being lied to? Be careful how you say it, because we don't want to trigger the nasty algorithms. And I would really appreciate it if this resonates with you at all. Please do like, please do make a comment, and please do subscribe and share. It really helps. Thank you so much for watching today. As they say, I'll be back. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. And above all, stay curious and stay free.